Like many other brands, VW offers all-wheel drive on their subcompact crossover. But what's so odd about the Taos is that when you opt for it, it changes other key components to the driving experience.
Subscribe and hit the bell for notifications if you enjoy fun, detailed car reviews and content on vehicles from every category, new and used. Thank you.
If you're looking for a full review, I've already done that on the 2022 VW Taos. For a more in-depth look at the interior, exterior, and the trims, check that one out. But if you're even remotely thinking about the all-wheel drive model, I would stick around. VW keeps it simple with the trims. You have S, SE, and SEL. Nothing else. You have the IQ Drive package available for S and SE, which gives you some active safety features along with rain-sensing windshield wipers and a heated leather-wrapped steering wheel of all things. This model, being an SE, will also have availability of a panoramic sunroof,
which is also an option for the SEL, but be aware, when you add that IQ Drive and some accessories, you can creep past 34 grand like my model here, a price that several of its all-wheel drive competitors can't reach. And this still has another trim on top of it. At least you won't have a dealer markup to worry about if you buy from Royal on the Eastside in Bloomington, Indiana. The staff is knowledgeable, they just about always have an interesting inventory, and they are not marking up any of their new cars over sticker. If you're in the market, check them out. The Taos starts out reasonably priced, but the options add up quicker than usual.
To be fair, you do get quite a bit of car for your money. Now, if you're wondering about ground clearance, you have 6.6 inches of it here. Yeah, no, that ain't lying. So truly, if you're trying to get over a rock the size of my phone, you will struggle. Under the hood is VW's 1.5-liter turbocharged direct-injected inline-4. This engine in front-wheel drive form is hooked up to an 8-speed auto, but here we get a 7-speed dual clutch. Yes, this does mean gas mileage takes a noticeable hit, but it still remains class competitive. This engine is a little special though because it uses something called the Miller cycle,
which basically closes the intake valve early for better efficiency under light loads. This new 1.5-liter also uses variable turbine geometry to increase pressure at low RPMs to help eliminate lag, kind of reminding me of the dynamic pressure 2.5 turbo from Mazda, but I'd really like an engineer to comment on that. Despite only 158 peak horsepower, the power band as a whole is torquey.
Honestly, this does feel like a naturally aspirated engine, and it's very linear. Torque comes in pretty low. There's not a whole lot of waiting for the engine to kick in, but really, the Taos does have an issue with delivery, but it's more so because of the transmission. Before we get into that though, I would like to do a 0 to 60 test. Keep in mind, we got a reasonable 8.3 seconds with the front wheel drive model. I honestly don't know what's gonna happen here because usually all-wheel drive models in this kind of low power scenario actually put off worse 0 to 60 times, but I think this is gonna shift quicker. And I think this transmission, along with the extra grip, will allow this to actually launch harder, even though it doesn't have all that much power to work with. For this test, I'll have traction control shut off, the climate control is off, and I'm gonna put it into sport. So one thing that's new here is ESC Sport. So it does show traction control off. It has launch control? I did not believe that it would actually say launch control. It did though. Oh my God. 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds. So about 0.8 seconds quicker than the regular model. That's a pretty noticeable improvement and definitely towards the top of the class, easily getting past even the 2.5-liter Subaru Crosstrek and Mazda CX-30, which both have more power. When it comes to styling, there's not really going to be a difference between the front-wheel drive and the all-wheel drive models, unless we're talking about the SEL trim, which will get special 19-inch wheels with the 4Motion. Base models stick with alloy, black painted 17-inch wheels, with the SE model getting 18s.
No trim leaves you looking like you cheaped out. Other key features include standard LED headlights, SE and SEL get proximity unlock via a button, and SEL buyers get adaptive LED headlights that turn around corners at night. Looks are subjective, but I see this as a friendly looking, sharp city SUV, but tell me what you guys think. So, it still looks inoffensive, but now keeps pace with many cars much more powerful than itself. That means the venerable DSG makes the all-wheel drive a no-brainer. Well, not exactly. Mainly because at low speeds this drives like it has an hour of stick shift experience and is running off of 2 hours of sleep and Red Bull. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but it is unrefined for an automatic.
Sometimes, on top of being clunky on occasion, it can also be laggy, which I think is a little bit more of an issue than like just right there. It's just like VW needs to take a little bit of extra time with the transmission tuning for both of these, because I've seen the dual clutch transmission in other products here do better than this. But come on, give me the power. There we go. Yeah, that's frustrating. Again, I'm keeping my foot the same level there in the gas. If you nail it, she can take off. And it shifts quick, and you can shift manually. Unfortunately, you don't have paddle shifters here.
Which I normally don't care about, but could be a little fun with the DSG. The weird thing is I don't feel turbo lag from the engine when the car has momentum. It seems like when it's in the right gear, it feels linear and natural. I also found that keeping it in S mode makes the trans a little more predictable at low velocity, and a Taos owner also mentioned they felt the same way. At speed, the clunkiness goes away, but the transmission still hesitates to downshift until you get further into the throttle, something this engine can at least deal with well.
Now, if I'm just in my regular driving mode and I just start to roll onto the throttle, she gets up and goes the way that it should. And really, this transmission doesn't need to do all that much with 184 pound-feet of torque available just at 1,750 RPMs. There's good low-range power here. We're doing about 65, and you know, it's not hush quiet in here, but it's around what I would expect for an SUV in the class.
I could say the same about the interior quality.
On the inside of the Taos all-wheel drive, there's just about 2 differences between this and the 2-wheel drive model. But before I get into that, let me go over some of the highlights here. One, this is a large cabin with a mostly modern, fresh look here. The fit and finish is okay for the class, with some panel gaps and materials just looking and feeling cheap. However, you do get quite a bit of technology, especially at the base model, all things considered. You have an 8-inch display in the gauge cluster here that's pretty configurable, and if you get the SEL, it'll be a 10-inch display that's even better. And you get Apple CarPlay, Android Auto standard, but SEL buyers will get that wireless, with SE buyers at least getting a wireless charger. All all-wheel drive models will have heated seats, even if that's the base trim. And if you get all-wheel drive on the SEL, you actually add ventilated seats. When it comes to seating, you'll have a 2-tone cloth on the base model, whereas this gets like a ton of different materials. It's called Cloud Tex, and it's very comfy. Plus here I'll have lumbar adjustment, something you don't get on the base model. The top spec will get it more premium, but also more boring leather. And while I wish I could adjust the seat bottom a little bit more, I found these seats to be supportive, soft, and they hold me in just enough for this kind of vehicle. Plus, you do have soft touch materials where your elbows rest. One weird feature that is absent here is dual zone automatic climate control. You have to step all the way up to the SEL for that, which, whatever. At least you have, analog buttons and dials for pretty much everything in here. Something that other VW products are starting to move away from, and I'm glad to see it here. It might not look fancy, and it doesn't really feel high quality, but it really keeps me less distracted from the road. 8-inch screens on the SE, or you get the 6.5 on the base.
The feature that would make me want to go to the SE over the base is the 6 speakers that come on the SE versus the 4 on the S. This is best in class in one definitive area, practicality.
Giant door panel that can fit my 40-ounce hydro flask, nice little storage cubbies throughout, and a huge back seat. Something that a lot of SUVs larger than this can't really brag about. And the trunk, while short, continues this trend of really punching above its weight in terms of practicality. The trunk isn't as tall, but it's still a really usable space.
And one that can put much larger vehicles to shame. The reason for the all-wheel drive getting less cargo area is likely down to our next significant all-wheel drive exclusive.
We also have independent rear suspension. So here we have a windy kind of rough road Oh, wow, that is definitely better. Yeah, okay, that makes a big difference. There's a little bit more body roll than I would expect. I do wish the steering was more direct, more natural. You can take this over pretty harsh roads, and you know, it's not going to be ultimately as forgiving as something like a Subaru Crosstrek, but it does come off composed and maybe a bit more sporty.
Which I'll pin down to that vague yet nicely weighted steering in sport mode in the DSG when you're pushing it.
And it doesn't feel like it's bouncing over any of these imperfections. It appears to be pretty sure-footed. Because I remember taking the regular one over here, and it still felt secure ultimately, but it was way more loose and disturbed feeling under duress, whereas this is pretty glued to the ground. So if you live in an area with a lot of bad roads, the all-wheel drive model, honestly, with that independent rear suspension, will make a noticeable difference for you.
When it comes to off-road capability, the Haldex system in the Taos has proven itself in a test done by Driving Sports TV. This has an off-road mode that uses the brakes to sort out power away from spinning wheels. That sub 7 inches of ground clearance is the real limiting factor.
But the thing is, with this kind of driving experience, now with the independent rear suspension and this handling noticeably better, I think this now handles well enough to justify the price in the higher trims.
It also has enough features for the money, and its cutesy dimensions with a cavernous interior are hugely attractive in the subcompact class. But if we're talking 34 to 36 grand, it quickly falls down in quality and powertrain refinement to similarly priced, well-equipped Mazda CX-5s, Subaru Foresters, RAV4s, and CR-Vs. Another area where the Taos hasn't fared too well is first-year reliability. There have been quite a few owners reporting stalling issues related to the fuel system and infotainment problems, to be specific. A recall was issued, and I'm hoping this will prove itself soon, but time is going to have to tell. While I can only predict at this point if reliability is a high priority, I'd say there are various better options. In short, I think the Taos is a good product with immense potential. The quick shifting, speedy launching DSG adds a new level of athleticism to the Taos, as does the confidence of the independent rear suspension and all-wheel drive. If you're looking for a compact crossover with a small footprint, ludicrous practicality, numerous features, a fresh interior, and a little confidence on back roads, the Taos 4Motion deserves your attention. But if you're seeking a transmission that won't spill your coffee, or quality appropriate for a 30 grand plus car, I'd probably forget about the Taos and this review.
Sorry.